Advisory Committee. I think we might be having a couple folks join us online. It looks like that is being set up right now. Thank you.
The man behind the curtain.
The man behind the curtain. My name is David Fenley. I am the chair. Let's go around the room quickly here and introduce ourselves, and then I will go to members online once I see that is up and running, which might be about right now. Let's start with Carrie at the end of the table.
Carrie Sheldon, Precinct G.
Diane Graham-Raff, Metropolitan Area Agency on Aging, also known as Trellis.
Patty Thorson, Metro Area Agency on Aging and Trellis.
Allison Edmond.
Darrell Paulsen, Region F, and I'm also the vice chair.
Richard Rowan, AARP.
Heidi Meyer, Minnesota CCD.
Claudia Fugly, MNCCD.
Eric Henriksen, MCD.
Thank you, everybody in the room. It looks like we have, I think, at least one person online. Is that Jeff?
Yeah, I'm actually on the phone, David. So
Okay. That works just as well. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself,
thank
Jeff?
you.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, Jeff Danes, Precinct T.
Perfect, thank you. And nobody else, no other members are on the phone or online. Is that correct? I don't see anybody else.
Ken, I'm online.
Oh, Ken. Okay, there we go, Ken. I see you now. Thank you. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Ken.
Yeah, Ken Rodgers. I think I'm also Precinct D.
Thank you, Ken. All right, that is everybody I think. If I missed anybody, please chime in now. Otherwise, we'll just dive into the agenda. And the first thing okay, audience. That sounds good. Let's start on my left, the audience right. If you want to introduce yourselves as well.
Sure. I'm Joe Orville. I'm with MTS, and I have a presentation later on.
Thank you. And then
I'm Kimberly Malone. I'm the manager of the Investigation Resolution Unit in the Council's Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity.
thank you.
Meredith Klekotka, I'm the Shared Mobility Program Manager for Metro Transit, and I have a presentation later.
Okay. Thank you.
Adam Mehl, Metro Transit Marketing.
Greg Tuveson, Street Operations Assistant Manager. We're here to discuss the state fair.
Awesome. Since we're doing everybody and Andy didn't get a chance, go ahead, Andy.
Andy Streisick, Metro Mobility.
All right, thank you, everybody. Let's dive into the agenda. The first thing on the agenda is to approve the agenda. I would entertain a motion to do just this.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Perfect. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Nay?
Aye.
Aye. Fantastic. Thank you online as well. And also, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from July, unless anybody has any changes to it.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like to just note a change. It does appear I was present on the minutes by the X, but it also shows that I was excused. So just a clarification, I was obviously absent. Apologies to the fellow committee members. There's something that came up, but I would just note that get reflected on the minutes.
And you did let us know if memory serves me correctly, yes. So it isn't excused.
To me, that would have meant that's why it's present.
Okay. Thank you both. So we'll make sure to get that changed. So with that change to have you being excused as opposed to present?
It shows it. It's just on the tally on top. It shows an X as if I was present. So it's kind of showing, it's pointing to two. You know,
okay.
If I'm,
you were not doing both at the same time, I would imagine. Okay. Thank you for the clarification. We'll get that changed. Are there any other additions, subtractions, changes to the minutes?
with that, I'd make a motion to approve the minutes.
Perfect. Perfect. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Nay?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, perfect. Oh, it's much faster doing that in person. All right, let's just dive right into the agenda. We have the State Fair coming up first here. We love to hear from you every year. Changes, accessibility, all that good stuff. So dive on in, folks.
Oh, you can sit down.
Is there a,
And you just say, for the presentation, you just say, next slide, and he'll do the slide for you.
can we go back one? Can we go back one slide, please? Thanks. All right. Thank you very much, members of the committee. As I said, my name is Adam Mehl, Metro Transit Marketing, Project Manager for the Marketing and Communications for the State Fair, alongside the State Fair mascots, Fairchild and Fairborn, from a photo shoot we did way back in the year 2019 with anticipation of using it for 2020. So that's the look you'll see on our creative is those three characters, and we hope to get some mileage out of that one too. So you can go to the next slide, please. We'll talk about 2021 a little bit here. As you can imagine, with the pandemic still going on and ridership overall being lower, we had lower ridership for 2021. We had around 105,000 rides for 2021 across 3 sites. We went down to those 3 sites primarily because of driver shortages. We did not have the staff to support many more than that. We also remained with our weekday start time. That was sort of the first hit of our driver challenges that we started seeing a few years back when we moved from an 8 a.m. weekday start time to a 9 a.m. start time. 8 a.m. was for weekends and Labor Day. We also did not run the 960 last year as well, due, again, to driver shortage and also to the fact that, again, with the pandemic still in full force, not a lot of people downtown for work, and that was one of the primary audiences for that route. Next slide, please. So to talk about 2022, it's going to be similar to last year. We are focusing on contactless payment here. We'll do the $6 cash round trip fare. But if you choose to use the Metro Transit mobile app or our online ticketing solution, there is a $1 per ticket discount. We really want people to use that. It makes it easier for everybody. It's faster to board, cheaper. Everyone wins there. Minnesota Valley Transit Authority will also be accepting our app and electronic tickets. They also have their own app as well that they'll be selling tickets on. Southwest Transit, similar to previous years because they have a different fare structure than us, they will be doing their own app and not using our app or online ticketing system. Next slide, please.
Okay, once again, Greg Tuveson, Assistant Manager, Street Operations, Metro Transit. For 2022, we're going to do the express sites the same as last year. There's going to be 3 of them. They are located in Cottage Grove. What used to be 28th Avenue Station next to the Mall of America is now 30th Avenue Station. The road was renamed. And we will be at County Road 73 on the west side of the Metro, Hopkins Crossroads. So same 3 sites, again, due to operator shortages. Don't want to not deliver something. The start times are 9 o'clock on weekdays in the morning and 8 o'clock on weekends and holiday. That's when we start. The last bus on Labor Day is 10 p.m. That's a change, and all the hours of the fair have changed this year in case you're not aware, and they are done closing the Mighty Midway at 11 p.m. instead of midnight. So there is a change to that, but they are opening the fair 1 hour later. So instead of 6 a.m., it's 7 a.m. The regular route service we do have around the fairgrounds are the Route 61, the A line on Snelling, and Route 3 that runs on Como. Next slide.
And so, as I mentioned with the marketing, we'll be out there in the region, letting people know about our options to get there. Because we have limited locations, we're being more targeted with where we're marketing. It will be really specifically on digitally targeting the areas around those 3 parking ride locations, in the east, west, and south. We'll be doing our general transit fleet advertising, which is region-wide. We'll also be emailing all previous customers who've purchased an online or open mobile app ticket to let them know. That seemed to work pretty well for us in previous years in terms of informing people who have of the changes. Especially really was helpful last year when we reduced sites and people didn't have the same locations they went to available to them, such as like 95th Parking Ride or one of the northern sites. And of course, like I said, social media be a big part of this as well. And then earned media through the Metro Transit Public Relations Group. Next slide. Right, a couple other things we'll be doing in terms of outreach at the State Fair, we will be doing our grandstand booth. There'll be a change to that one. In previous years, we've had transit information at those booths, talking to customers and potential customers about transit routes and directions and things like that. Over the years, the visitors to the booth seeking transit information have become lower and lower, usually around less than 10%. A lot of other people coming for various things, but not for transit information. This year, we're going to use that booth space again, this time to focus on hiring. We're going to have people from HR, police, transportation, talking to people, answering questions about what it's like to work for the council, what the benefits are, and how they can apply. So really putting it all out there to try to get people hired and fix the problems that we have. We'll also be doing some additional hiring outreach at the park and ride locations themselves with some signage and QR codes that folks can scan in order to learn more about working for Metro Transit. Eco Experience and the Kick Gas booth will once again be part of that, talking to people about sustainability and the benefits of taking transit versus driving alone. So that's been a long time successful piece for us. We may have some transit information there. One of the other pieces we found is that the group of folks who go to the more eco-minded location are generally much more open and interested in learning about transit than random people walking through the grandstand, which is really like a market rather than something about sustainability or something like that where people are predisposed to talk to us about it. Next slide, please.
Okay, my turn. There will be some changes this year at the State Fair turnaround located off of Randall by the main entrance gate by the parking lots. The big key is our service will be handling gates 4 through 9 for the 3 sites. So we've got, I wish I could see better, sorry. We have the Route 961 for Bloomington and 4 and 5. One's a pickup location and one's a drop-off location. So they're right next to each other. You go to, when you get to the fair, you drop off, and when you leave the fair, you will get to the pickup site. And then the 962 is County Road 73. Same deal there with pickup and drop-off, and those will be signed. And the 967 Cottage Grove will be in 8 and 9. So the big change though coming is it's going to be reviewed yearly because if we get back to all 14 gate locations, is Minnesota Valley is moving from gate 1 to gates 13 and 14. And the main reason for this is that if there doesn't have to be too much rain, but a significant rainfall, that gate 1 floods out. I don't know if anybody has experienced that, but I have seen it, and there's 4 inches of standing water in that gate, so. Wow. Yeah. So we're giving them that chance to move, and we'll see how that works. I'm sure it'll be much better, but want to give anybody from Minnesota Valley a heads up that they're going to be on the other side of the turnaround. And then for the local routes, they're going to be out on the main road. We do not have those routes come into this turnaround. And I think that's about all I got for this, so next slide.
One other piece we'll mention too, just before we wrap up, is this benefit to, there's maybe not a ton of silver linings to us having so few sites, but one thing I will note that's probably applicable to this group is we are now at only Metro Transit sites. We're not renting sites and making them work. That has one major benefit in that it's at our stations that are built to ADA accessibility from the get-go, so we don't have to worry about if there's issues or accommodations obviously if accommodations need to be made at another site, we make them, but it's easier for us, and sometimes there's unforeseen things and things like that, but we know that our stations are built ready to go. So one benefit that I'd like to point out to an otherwise somewhat grim outlook.
That's everything?
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much. Real quickly, so I'm assuming nothing has changed with Metro Mobility drop-off locations? If so, or if not, can you talk a little bit about that?
Chair Fenley, members of the committee, that's one we do not handle.
Okay.
We only manage the bus express
routes.
service.
Got it. I should have known better.
Chair, members of the committee, you are correct. There's no change, so we have the primary and secondary drops available.
Thank you. Heidi?
My question is, because these are pretty big changes, are they going to be on the website?
Yes, they're currently live on the website now, and they are similar to last year too, so.
Okay, and then the other thing is, I was very disappointed at the Gay Pride Festival when I was there, because all you had was 2 big tables and some shelter, you know, so you don't get rained on. And your guys were just kind of standing there, not really doing anything, and they were handing out the rainbow symbol of the transit, you know, like a sticker, and the cardboard thing. There wasn't really, and I still highly think that you should do some learning and some training and some education stuff. I know you're desperate for hiring drivers, but there are still people out there that want to know stuff and still want to learn this stuff. And like, I know at the state fair, you had in the past how to put a bicycle onto the bus, you know, in the front, you kind of have that show and tell stuff. You had a few pamphlets and what things look like, or maybe you can talk about now we got away from pamphlets. We now go to a website to learn how things work. Do some teaching in that area at the same time you're still trying to get people to be hired. Because you're losing the mentors of what we worked so hard for. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Any other members have questions, comments?
This is Ken. I have a question.
Go ahead, Ken.
So I'm hearing myself in the echo, but
You're
so
not
I have
echoing
a
here.
couple of. Pardon me?
You are not echoing here.
Okay, all right. I'll try to just power through this. A couple of questions. One in particular is, and I'm not sure you guys can answer this, Adam, but maybe you could do some research and get back to us. In terms of Metro Transit and the use of IRA for blind travel assistance on Metro Transit, where will the IRA system end when somebody uses IRA to get to the fair? So as soon as they get off the bus, or will it work a little bit in the fair itself?
Meredith, I'm not sure I know the exact answer to that. My general understanding from working on the IRA project is that it ends when the customer's trip ends. So, and that would be the free paid promotion part of it that Metro Transit sponsors.
Right.
You know, I would expect, you know, if, you know, I can't guarantee how far it gets into the fair, but in my opinion, the trip ends when you get to the gate of the state fair. After that, I think it would be the trip is over. I can't say for sure, though. I apologize for that.
Okay, and I'm sure it all depends on what the geofence actually designates as the end point.
Well, I believe, I think we're pretty loose on geofencing, because I mean, really the region is the whole area. I think our promotion's more based on the activity, not the fence itself. Unlike, say, like MSP or Nicollet Mall or something like that. I mean, we can't really, our geofence would basically be the whole 7 counties.
Right, okay. Thank you. And then one other thing I'd like to suggest is, so for someone like me who's blind, I have no idea what the transportation hub looks like. Is it a straight line with gates numbered in order 1 through 14 or whatever it is? They're separated by how much room? I think it would be really helpful if somebody could develop a narrative and actually describe what the hub looks like. So someone like me who is blind and traveling using Metro Transit to and from the fair can basically have an idea of what that layout looks like to some degree. So a simple narration would be really helpful on the website. That's a suggestion. The other thing I want to just add is in relationship to the state fair, I am working with the Office of Accessibility for State Fair. And while the state fair has always provided disability-related services for deaf and those that need ASL interpretation to be at the fair. There's been very little, if any, accessibility for blind fairgoers. This year, they're increasing their accessibility for blind travelers, and there will be audio description at a few of the set shows throughout the fair. It's a first step in the right direction, and eventually I'm hoping that we're able at some point to have IRA cover the fair so that it can be seamless from Metro Transit. Someone using IRA, Metro Transit can just blend into IRA at the fair. But that's a hopeful future possibility. So I just wanted to share that for members related to the State Fair.
Thank you.
That's a really important question I can't answer. What is an iris? I'm trying, is that wave thing he talks about?
Yeah,
that helps
so
the
IRA-
that needs to go?
Yes, Heidi, so AIRA is essentially a wayfinding. There's someone,
Okay.
yeah, on,
I'm tracking what he's saying.
yeah. All right, very, very good questions, Ken, and we can all hope one day that the State Fair has IRA coverage over it.
I'll vote for him.
Go ahead.
Looking at the map, since there isn't an express site for the north or east, I'm assuming that you rely primarily on the regular routes and then connecting with the A line there at Rosedale. In the past, there's been issues with city bus versus the state fair buses in terms of the stroller issue, because folks don't have to fold up on city buses, but they do on the state fair. So is there some sort of education or accommodation planning ahead for the fact that that's really the only option for people who use mobility devices to get to this fair from the north and the east, to hit the A line, that the A line needs to make sure that they maximize the spaces for those folks?
Yeah, the securement area for devices should not be used for strollers. When I was a driver, I would say this person needs to get in here, you find another seat. That's the way it should be. Now, we know that we can't physically or anything, it's more of a, I don't want to say stern request, but it's like, hey, I got somebody with a chair or some other device that needs to use this. And that's not just state fair, that's all our service is supposed to be that way, but we can only do what we can do. But if the operator doesn't do anything, that you should call into customer service about that, customer relations, and just say, hey, got a device, the person wouldn't move, the way I would look at it. Before there's another question, I forgot, I do want to make a comment about Southwest Transit. They are operating only 8 days of the fair, Thursday through Sunday, both weekends, I guess. And they won't have Labor Day service either. So they're Thursday through Sunday, and then Thursday through Sunday. So your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in that second week is going to be, they won't have service.
Any other questions?
Well, just to clarify, is that passed by, because like if you have priority seating and someone doesn't move, does the same procedure where it's called in, does that get logged and tracked?
I've handled a lot of customer relations complaints for our department and, send it out to the supervisors. I have seen, put into a customer relations complaint, and then we address that with the supervisor and hopefully the operator's manager, and make sure that, hey, you can't just not say anything, you should say something and do the best you can to get that opening or that space released to a person with device.
I just want to say again and iterate this, you really need to make some of this very clear on the website, or don't even think about laptops and computers, think about the mobile phone and how easy is it to get that information, because you're throwing a lot of stuff that, that we have to learn, because after the pandemic, I have to relearn how to get, now I gotta take a 3 and I gotta do this and I have to do this. So I want my phone to be able to process that information. So if me and Ken wanna meet up, we can actually meet up, you know, he does his part and I do my part. Cause mine is the processing, he has to figure out, you know, cause he can't see in a different way. So how do we both meet at the same spot that you're telling us that we can actually meet at? You know, so I want the website to be really accessible enough that, you know, different people with different kinds of disability can actually use it. Don't just throw it together because you want to save money and you're desperate for drivers. I know you are. But there's a bigger picture to this issue. Thank you.
Andy?
Jeff, members of the committee, to your question, it is important to point out, too, that it is public transit and ADA rules that way still apply. So if somebody's in a stroller and that's why there is not room for a chair, the same rule does apply that we have Metro Transit has 30 minutes to get another bus there that does have a verified seat available for somebody with a disability. If they can do that with the next scheduled trip, that's fine, and if they can't, then they do need to dispatch another bus, and customer relations is intimately aware of that requirement.
Thank you, Andy. We have another comment? Go ahead.
I'm Kimberly Below, and again, I'm from the Investigation Resolution Unit with the council. Any of those customer complaints that the customer relations calls that you make, if it's about an ADA issue, it doesn't just go to the supervisor, it comes to my team for review as well. And so we're looking at that from the ADA perspective, just as a point of clarification that, that beyond the customer service element of that, that when there are ADA issues brought up, that's still coming to my team for review.
Thank you very much. I think the overarching point is definitely call that stuff in when it happens, please. Metro Transit and the Met Council need that information to address it. Any other comments from members? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, one last thing. This is likely my last go-around with the State Fair. I'm looking at next year of retiring after 39 years. So I just want to say it's been a pleasure addressing you guys for the last decade, except for the COVID stuff. But, you know, it's been a pleasure, and thank you. I'll remember these as I go on.
Well, it's been nice having you. And thank you both for coming.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we have a tip presentation from Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Joe Barbeau, and I'm a planner upstairs at the Metropolitan Transportation Services. And every year we produce what's known as a Transportation Improvement Program, and I'll be honest, I don't know exactly how familiar much of this group is. But we presented this to our usual groups, our Transportation Advisory Board and Transportation Committee, and Councilmember Sterner suggested that we come to this group. I think I was here probably 5 years ago, which probably means most of you weren't. I don't know how much turnover there's been. But what I'm going to do today is talk a little bit about what this is and how our 500 or so transportation projects over a 4-year period get into the Transportation Improvement Program, and maybe take the opportunity for questions that you might have about the process. So stop me if I'm glossing over something, because I tend to present this to the TAAC group who sees this every single year. So next slide. Is that how I do it? Okay, good. Can't really see that well. So anyway, I'll talk a bit about what the tip is. I'm going to stand because I can't really see that slide. So any project that's funded by the federal government or that is considered regionally significant needs to be in this 4-year list of transportation projects. Regionally significant is an indication, for the most part, of a project that would impact air quality. And so usually any project with a lane addition of at least a mile, for example. This also includes ABRT projects and light rail projects. So any project that would affect air quality. Any MPO in the country does this, as the MPO. An MPO is a region of over about 50,000 people. And so a TIP is produced by every small and medium and large region in the country. And then it's incorporating what's known as the STIP, the Statewide Transportation Improvement Program at MnDOT. And the reason for that is that it has to be there in order to be underway, in order for federal funding to come into the state of Minnesota. And the important piece there is that it really puts the region's eyes, using in the form of the council and our Transportation Advisory Board, on the process and on the projects that go through there to make sure that they're compliant with our processes, which is kind of a low bar, or our policies, I should say, which is kind of a low bar, but it is a process that every region in the country goes through. So next slide. So I'll talk a bit about the projects. Transit projects. Transit makes up, I think you'll see on a future slide, about almost 50% of the TIP. Projects in the TIP are transit projects that the Metropolitan, that Metro Transit and the council produce with federal funds, FTA formula funds. This also includes MVTA projects, Southwest Transit projects, and the other opt-outs. Roadway projects that MnDOT programs, those usually go through various MnDOT processes that land in the TIP. There's not a lot of council hands on those projects, but we do approve them through this process. The regional solicitation, which you may have heard about at this committee at some point. I haven't been here for a while to talk about that, but and this is a process that does come through the council and that is approved by the council to put about $200 million every other year towards bike ped, roadway, and transit projects. And then MnDOT projects, and even possible in Sherburne or Wright County, we have small pieces of that are in our planning area because of census mapping, and even a piece in Wisconsin, Holton, Wisconsin, but we're probably gonna lose that after this census because that was connected by the old bridge over there. So we haven't had a project over there in years. And so the council approves the entire TIP and all of these project types. It's about 500 projects for a 4-year period typically. Next slide. So here's the schedule where we're at now. We just put it out for public review. We had about 18 people comment, about 30 total comments, mostly suggesting maybe more bike ped projects. We had one commenter suggesting that everything should be spent on roads. Not a lot of comments directly applicable to the TIP really. In past years, we've had over 200 comments. Usually those are form letter comments. But after getting those comments, TAB is going to recommend approval of the TIP in August, its August 17th meeting, and then the council will approve it in September, and then the state DOT approves it in October, with federal approvals from FHWA and FTA in November, about November 1st probably. So next slide. So we just had our 45-day public review period, and trying to get, the goal is to gather feedback information from community members and maybe people that aren't usually a part of the process. You know, a lot of the comments are more general and not necessarily about projects that are coming up in the next 4 years. So those project comments really do sort of affect, for example, the TPP process that's coming up. So we do gather these comments from, for different purposes. The TIP itself is a very specific document with a very specific time frame. And sometimes some of these comments aren't really timing-wise in line with what's going on with the TIP. But we did get a lot of participation, and we had a number of people at our virtual public meeting providing input. So it's good to generally get people involved and interested in transportation. Next. So here's a summary of what's in there. Like I said, it's a 4-year program, about $5.5 billion, 500 projects. You can see it's about half transit, and that comes in the form of some of the bigger projects. For the most part, the ABRT projects take up a big chunk of that. And you can also see the source in the box on the left, Federal Highway and Federal Transit make up, just over $3 billion of the $5.6 billion, with local and state taxes making up the bulk of the rest. Next. And that's really all I have, and I know this might be a little bit nebulous to people that aren't involved in it every day, so if you want to ask questions about what the TIP is or whatever else you may have, let me know. And with that, I'll stand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of my questions is when it comes to the ped and bike projects, could you give some examples of what those types of projects are? And a follow-up would have been, is the TIP focused on all new build, or is it also focused on rehabilitation and maintenance activities?
I'll start with the second question, and the TIP is any federal funding that comes in needs to be in the TIP, and so there are a lot of maintenance projects in there. In fact, I would say that the majority of roadway projects are maintenance projects and there's not a lot of expansion of roadway lanes or anything. As for bike and ped projects, most, not all, but most of the projects that are in there for bike and ped come through that regional solicitation that I talked about. We have a bike, multi-use trails and bicycle facilities category and a pedestrian category. And a lot of the pedestrian projects are sidewalk fill-in projects, you know, maybe doing a stretch of sidewalk, filling in sidewalk gaps in almost anywhere. There's not a lot of big regional pedestrian projects. And then as for bike projects, they tend to be trail projects, but they do need to be linear projects that can serve the purpose of recreation, but they also should serve, or at least be able to serve the purpose of transportation. Also, a lot of projects, roadway projects do have bike and ped amenities included in them. They don't fit that category in the table that you saw, but we do have some of that occurring in primarily roadway projects.
And then one of my last questions is, does the TIP reference or co-track, I guess you could say, with any of the ADA transition plans or any of the other type of accessibility plans and programs that are already in place?
Not directly, though. The regional solicitation that the council administers, we do have a requirement that an ADA transition plan, the transportation pieces of the ADA transition plan be complete. That's a fairly new requirement. Now we're looking into establishing an amount of time, you know, within the last X number of years. So it's sort of an evolving thing that just happened a couple of cycles ago.
Okay. I only ask because if the TIP is a 5-year plan to focus on funding of these projects, I think it would be beneficial if, in order to get the funding for an ADA transition plan, if it was referenced at some point.
I want to make sure I follow. Are you suggesting that that funding of a plan would be highlighted in the TIP? Or I might be mishearing you.
Well, my idea would be if you have an ADA transition plan, the transition plan needs funding to get off the ground in 20 years. We need all these improvements. You know, there's certain lack of accessibility in the transportation network, and it could even be into a sidewalk or connecting a sidewalk. But then you have this separate plan, the TIP, which looks at 5-year funding to get these projects off the ground. But if there's no reference or a marrying of these two plans, it's an opportunity to get funding for those types of needs.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. There are the various projects, or the various sources of funding that I've cited have various ways to get in the TIP. And at least some of those that come through the council, which is probably about 15% of the TIP, could explore that option. So for example, we have a very arduous scoring process that we just went through. But for next time, you know, we could consider, you know, a project's appearance in an ADA transition plan to be worthy of points. So that's something I'll take back and bring up. You won't see any result of that discussion for a couple of years because we are just finishing up the process. But so I think
if
that's
that was
that we can use.
If that was a comment during the review period of the TIP, do you think it may have gotten addressed or been somewhat incorporated a little more than now, kind of after?
During the TIP public comment process, probably not. It's more, that's the kind of comment that isn't really as directly a part of the TIP as it is maybe informing some of the processes that get projects into the TIP. At least that's how I'm hearing it. I think this meeting's recorded, so there's a couple other people I'm going to share this piece with, that, like Heidi Schallberg in our office, who's sort of our ADA and our pedestrian person. But as I'm hearing it, it's more of a comment that would be addressing other pieces that contribute to the TIP as opposed to directly at the TIP, if that makes sense. Aside from language you could put in the TIP about transition plans, but in terms of like really impacting the projects, that's almost a step removed from the TIP. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was a good question. Any other questions from members? I have one question. So in terms of either like number of projects or dollars, if you do have this information, how does our metropolitan area compare to other MPOs in terms of their their tips? Is it relatively equivalent where they're spending some odd billion dollars on 500 projects?
Mr. Chair, I don't know the answer to that. I suspect so, but I don't know for sure. Most federal formulas are based in large part on population, but I wouldn't say that I've ever gone and found the totals in other tips.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Heidi, go ahead.
My question is that, okay, to go to what they're both saying, is this only for the Twin Cities or is it for the state of Minnesota, or how does the projects get picked? I mean, because sometimes it feels like the suburbs or the outer people don't get it, or the upper, we got different parts of Minnesota that, that is warrant for some of your ideas. So how did that work? Or, I mean, you're built, so there's gotta be a reason how it works.
So the Metropolitan Council's MPO planning area is primarily the 7-county region, and then thanks to analyses done on the 2010 census, small pieces of Wright County and Sherburne County. So you'll also find urban areas around Duluth and Rochester and Fargo and Grand Forks, and so they all have their own processes. Now, much of the state isn't in those areas, and that's just more directly coming from MnDOT. So MnDOT has a lot of formulas that they distribute, geographically into other pieces. Anything that happens to come into this region from MnDOT, for example, has to be in our tip. But again, there's a lot of processes statewide and then more local and regional that populate the tip. So what we're doing doesn't really address greater Minnesota, but they are privy to a lot of the same funding processes that we are through the state DOT.
The only reason I ask, because a lot of people get left out, because we still have problems with the suburbs, with transit coming to fix things and do things. So we're always trying to say, hey, not just the local circle, go outside the circle too you work with. So I wanted to ask that question, how far do you push it, so everyone gets a piece of the pie and there's not just one location.
Thank you, Heidi. Go ahead, Darrell.
Joe, so you said BRT, arterial BRT is in that's a tip project. So in your words, how does that project benefit versus any other project that we look at?
How does it benefit, did you say?
Yeah.
I don't know if I have a good answer to that question.
Can I ask a clarifying question, Darrell? So are you like BRT compared to other BRT projects in the tip compared to other transit improvement projects?
Right, overall, yeah. I mean,
like a dollar comparison?
No, what he said was that there are certain projects that get approved, certain projects that are in there, like the area, like the BRT, aerial BRT, and I said, how does that get prioritized versus any other project that's in this?
Mr. Chair, so I don't, honestly, somebody from Metro Transit would probably be better equipped to answer that question than I am. So they provide us with their program based on their various funding sources, and that includes the high-profile projects like ABRT and BRT, where they're getting various funding from various sources. But it also includes bus purchases, track maintenance, and things of that nature. So
it's a combination because they have other sources and then they have other factors that give them that rating that qualifies them for that funding. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, they're getting, so they have various funding sources that are to be used in various ways. And I don't know a lot about those funding sources, but there's various FTA sources, and some are for bigger expansion projects, some are for maintenance and things of that nature, or buses. So they're in, our Metro Transit and our other transit providers are in, they provide their own programs of projects, and they are sort of constrained by the funding sources that they get. But we're getting to the point where probably somebody from Metro Transit would answer this a lot better than I can, so I'm sorry about that, but.
No problem. Thank you.
Go ahead, Andy.
Chair, members of the committee, I just wanted to remind folks with regard to your question, Chair, on how this might relate to other metropolitan planning organizations, TIPs. Remember that the council is still pretty unique as far as MPOs go in terms of the amount of different communities that we represent and the amount of space that we represent within one large metropolitan area as a unified MPO. So there is a more collaborative and sometimes contested process in deciding what we fund and how we fund it and where it goes. It's almost similar to like one state's Medicaid service. You know, if you know a lot about one area's MPO, then you know a lot about one area's MPO. But there is a lot that is not transferable, so it gets challenging to compare one tip to the other and see how they would match up, because so often it's kind of apples to oranges.
Kind of locked in.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Andy. I found this quite informative, and thank you, Councilmember Sterner, for suggesting that that Joe come here. I think maybe once a year would be good with a little more detail on process, and then the question about overlap between the ADA transition plan and the TIP plan. I mean, I'm sure there are projects that are on both of those plans. There's at least one, I would imagine. I could be wrong, but highlighting those and maybe kind of seeing a more not super detailed timeline, but a little more like this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. You know, year 1, year 2, year 3, because I think we could learn a lot from more regular presentations on this. But thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just add a comment?
Go for it.
Something I saw on the slide and just was thinking about here, where I don't know if as a committee we were offered or in the know of the opportunity to give public comment on the plan. Obviously, it is open to the public, and as a resident of Minnesota, I'm sure I could have found something, but I'm just wondering, in general, not even about this tip, but in a lot of plans that we might have comment on as a committee, because it looked like agencies also responded to the tip. If there's any interest, just as a committee, to know when these things come about, hopefully a month before, so it'd give the time necessary for us to introduce comments to these plans that I think are really important and steer, you know, dollars in ways that we might want to see certain projects or opportunities funded. I don't know how that looks. I don't know what that would be like, but I would just offer that for thought, I guess, as the committee or for the committee.
I think that sounds like a good idea. Maybe more of a formal approach between your office and this committee. I know I did receive an email. I didn't respond or provide comment. Yeah.
Ask some questions about transportation.
But yes, but I did. I don't know if everybody got the tip, you know, comment time email. But I think that's another good suggestion. We can have like, all right, TAAC, here's your opportunity to comment, and then we can or can't comment if we want to.
And I understand, Mr. Chair, it does get a little tricky where it comes to if you're representing the TAAC, you know, the TAAC kind of has to have some formal, this is our position, or if you're just a resident or a member of the public commenting. But just in general, it was kind of a moment we are remiss where we didn't get a chance to offer any comment for this particular tip, even though it, you know, maybe it wouldn't have had as much impact for what I was kind of talking about. But I think it's a good opportunity just to at least flag with everybody, you know, there's an opportunity here, if anyone wants to take it kind of thing.
I think we did as individuals have opportunity, but not, you know, it wasn't presented to us formally as a group. But I think that's another good suggestion. Heidi, go ahead.
If we're going to get those emails, in those emails, maybe they could send us to a website or something where we can watch a video or learn some things about it. So if I'm a user and I use it every day, which I do pretty much between Metro Mobility and the city bus, and then someone sticks me in the car. But beyond that, I want to know a little bit more, you know, because if you're not in this committee, you're not going to know all the ins and outs, because they might be asking a really good question and I'm just missing something in that question that, and if I can go to that website and read a little bit about it, then I can go back going, yeah, I've actually experienced that, or no, or I really need to tell you this, and I can answer the question. So I think it would be really good to have a, if you do a survey and send them out, somewhere we can go and learn a little bit about it if my name gets used again. Because I recently got an email, about transportation and how I use it, and, and I know it was important, but some of the questions, if you don't know what's really all going on, you can't really answer it correctly. So I don't know how much of your feedback is really valid or invalid, because I don't know if they know the whole scope of what's really going on. So it's something to think about.
Thank you, Heidi, and thank you, Joe, for coming, and I'm glad that you got a lot less four-letter word comments this year as opposed to past years.
It was a little easier to digest this year, yes, thank you. Thanks.
All right, micro transit project. This is cool. Meredith.
Yes,
We heard
thank
a
you,
little bit about
Chair.
this a couple months ago, but do you want to remind us about the
About a
pilot
year.
project?
Yeah, thank
Mhm.
you, Chair and committee members. I'm actually going to take this off. The last time I presented here, I was told that I was very muffled, so hopefully everyone can hear me. Yes, we touched base, I think, about a year ago when everyone was still in lockdown. So I think it was last July that I presented to this group. We've had a lot of developments on the microtransit project. I'm subbing in for John Harper, who couldn't be here today. But I've been the project manager on the project for the last year and a half, 2 years. And we incorporated some of the feedback from this group. So I'll get to it in the end about how we address some of the specific things. But first, I'm going to do just an overall project update as a refresher. So next slide, please. So for those of you that are unfamiliar, we are launching Metro Transit Micro, which is a microtransit service up in North Minneapolis. It's a 12-month pilot. This is a joint project between MTS, who runs Metro Mobility, and Metro Transit, because we're both interested in this style of service. And since it is a new style of service and it fits better a little bit under contracted operations, we thought we would do this jointly. Microtransit is demand responsive transit. So the idea behind it is that it's app enabled, so you can kind of see on that image somebody requesting a similar service on their phone. The routes are dynamically generated, so you don't have to be along a fixed route line and wait there. You can be picked up where you're at. But the idea is that you share trips with people. So it's very similar to a TNC style service, so like Uber and Lyft, with the exception that you're sharing rides with somebody else. I should say specifically, because it's relevant to this conversation, that the technology is privately managed. So no transit agency in the country manages their own microtransit software. It's always bid out and it's made by other companies. Typically, drivers and operators can either be managed by the same software company or they're managed by the organization or transit agency that's running the service. So next slide, please. So this is our service area in North Minneapolis. You can see on the map, it's up at Golden Valley and West Broadway, and then it's kind of hemmed in by the highways there and the regional park. We are providing some park access. There's a couple reasons why we chose this area for the pilot, but I think two stems from the goals the most. So the goal for this microtransit, this first pilot, was expanding mobility choices specifically for low wealth areas, for communities of color, and for people with accessibility needs. And the second was expanding access to our high frequency or fixed route transit ways. So this project area kind of hit both of those, and we saw lots of ridership retained along the C line in this corridor, which was really important because we knew that there were a lot of transit riders and people that would continue to ride through the pandemic. I think that's it. So next slide, please. As you saw on that map, it's a pretty small service area, so we're about 2.5 square miles, which is unusually small. One of the reasons we did it is we wanted to keep wait times very low for users so that it could really work more like a TNC service, like an Uber or Lyft. So getting people in under 10 minutes that you wouldn't have to pre-schedule rides. So the service design, this slide is actually incorrect. I will send out a corrected set. It's not corner to corner. So corner to corner service is where you might have to walk or roll to meet the vehicle. We are not doing that anymore. We are actually doing curb to curb service. So that means it will pick you up at your exact location and drop you off at your exact destination. It won't necessarily be the most direct path because you might pick up other passengers on the way, but it's definitely in terms of destination will get you where you need to go. For the service hours, we are trying to cover all or at least most of the high frequency fixed route in the service area. So we're running 5 a.m. to midnight, which kind of almost exactly covers that service area. For fares, typically microtransit would actually have a higher fare because it's a premium service because you're getting picked up at your destination and dropped off at your destination. But actually for the purposes of the pilot, we are keeping the fares the same as the bus and all eligible discount programs. So normal transfer rules apply. If you're eligible for TAAC, that's eligible, student discounts, any of those programs. It is a very small pilot, so we have 5 vehicles with 2 spares, so we'll never have more than 5 vehicles out at a time for that service area. And they are Metro Mobility style vehicles. So I think there's technically 3 wheelchair spots in them, but reasonably it's 2. So the way that we've set up the software, because it can be hard to maneuver 3 to get it in there, we have them set up as accessible for 2 vehicles, or 2 of those spots. Next slide, please. A little bit on the difference between Metro Transit's role versus MTS, just to clarify. So Metro Transit has been responsible for the marketing, for the promotion. We've been working with service development on the service design, so they've been a key partner in this, and the software procurement for the actual microtransit software. MTS is responsible for the contracted operations and will be actually running the system for the 12 months, but they've had huge input since they've been working with us since the beginning, so they've contributed to the service design and all the other items on there. Next slide, please. So these are our 2 vendors for this pilot for the 12 months. This is probably the biggest news, the contracting updates. So the software as a service contract, that is for the microtransit software that will be in the vehicles. It will be part of the app that people download to request rides. That's going to be through VIA Mobility. It's one of the oldest providers in microtransit. They have about 160 deployments across the country and across the world, quite frankly. They're international as well. One of the reasons we selected them, they have the most experience in deployment, but they also have the most paratransit experience. And I think that there is interest on the MTS side, which is one of the reasons that we're doing this in partnership. But VIA also delivers vehicles and operators, so they're a full service. We're not using them that way this time, but that is of interest, I think, in the future. So this was a good vendor for us. The second contract is for the operations, and that is Transit Team, who is one of the existing Metro Mobility providers. So they have lots of experience with the vehicles and in the service area because their garages are there. Next slide. A little bit on timeline. We are set to launch on Saturday, September 10th, so it's 5 short weeks away. So I'm getting this in right in time. In mid-May, we started a public education and in-reach to our garages so our operators know what to expect when they see these vehicles out on the street that are branded Metro Transit. In mid-July, we started some service and software training that will continue into early August. It's been slightly delayed due to the app launch. And then in late August, so about 2 weeks prior to service, you can expect to see some of the marketing campaign launch. Next slide. A little bit about the outreach and marketing approach, where you can anticipate seeing some of the materials, print materials that we're putting out there. This is a little bit tougher than like the state fair, for example, because it's a very targeted service area. So we can't broadly broadcast, Metro Transit Micro because it's just for the service area. So we've been doing outreach beginning in May. We are planning on having a kickoff event, so a Saturday press event. We're going to open at the Open Streets Broadway, which is that same day. So we'll be sending invites to community members and some of the representatives out there. But most of the external outreach is happening through the neighborhood or community groups through our outreach team. On the marketing side, you'll see most of the print materials, et cetera, on our own assets. So interior cards on the buses, the pylon on C Line and other BRT routes in the area, and those types of materials. We are having kind of a small social media presence and website and any earned media that we get as part of the launch. Next slide. So I just wanted to call out some of the great feedback that we got from this group last time and how we incorporated things in here, and I'm actually missing a couple. So one of the things that I think that I heard this last July when I addressed this group was that you definitely wanted to see curb to curb as part of it, as opposed to corner to corner and having to meet the vehicle. So definitely we'll be doing that style of service. The second thing that we asked for that's not on this formal feedback was for a video of how to board the vehicles and how to use the app, because that can be a barrier to even people scheduling, which I thought was a great point. And we are now working on it. Due to timing, we won't have it exactly at launch, but we have 12 months of service, so we'll probably have it within the first month or two of service to be able to publish that out there. Some of the other comments that we received was I don't know how you say the acronym, WCAG, the accessibility content for online. We got the feedback that 2.2, even though it wasn't fully released yet during the RFP process, that would be ideal. Unfortunately, none of the vendors came back none of them had 2.2. We had about 9 respondents, all the major players in the microtransit field. We actually did select VIA. They were the ones that were furthest along. Most vendors just had the WCAG 2.0 version, so they were ready to go with 2.1. So that definitely contributed, I think, in the selection process. The other requests that we received were the applications were fully compatible with the voiceover and talkback, and then a messaging capability to the driver. If there's any issues with pickup or where somebody's going to be, or there might be a delay in getting out of the door. So for the results, we do have messaging capabilities. It needs to be put in upon the request. So as you request your ride, you can add notes for the driver for your pickup and for your drop-off. So if there's anything special, go around to the back door, et cetera. And then we do have a call-in booking option. And as far as I know, and I can check on this and actually get back to you because I haven't gotten the response from our vendor yet, but the voiceover and talkback, I believe, does work with the app. This is one of the most experienced paratransit providers, so I'd be really shocked if that wasn't the case, but we just haven't gone over it explicitly. And with that, next slide. Those were the comments that I had. Chair, happy to take questions.
Darrell and then Heidi.
Meredith, I'm excited about this project. How quickly can it be replicated across the system? And how quickly could it be replicated if we were able to agree to something like this somewhere else?
Yes, great question. Thank you. This has taken quite a while to get off the ground. But it wasn't necessarily because of the complexity of the project.
Okay.
I think that you would need about a year of headway if I was to guess from the decision to make it, to do it for a certain area,
Sure.
to
The launch.
to launch, maybe a year and a half. The long part, quite honestly, is procuring the service. There's a lot of vendors in this space, and it takes time to vet them. And I anticipate that the council will want to test a couple different vendors over the course of deploying.
Sure. Thanks.
Go ahead, Heidi.
Yeah, I think this is a great idea, but I've seen this in human services, I've seen this everywhere. You get a great idea, but you're still behind on your homework. And I'm a little concerned when we go out and actually use it. I don't live in that area, but an example, I could get stranded or something could happen, or because you mentioned that we're still working on it, or we haven't gotten to that point, or we're not completely. So I don't know if all the bugs are out of the picture, and if you still have some serious issues you need to look at, because I don't want to be ending up, somebody in that area, let's say a social worker says, for 12 months, this would be perfect for you. And then there's bugs and stuff, and there's no way to fix the problem because I have to use this app that's kind of, you don't know if it's going to work, not work, sort of work. You're leaving me kind of worried a little. And because you didn't do any test pilot, and you didn't ask a group of people, here, put it on, and test it out, and we'll go and pick you up, to see if you've really got a solid plan. The idea is great, it's just I'm a little concerned about someone's going to be not very happy and you're going to hear about it. That's just my opinion and what I've heard. So it's something to think about, because you expect people with disabilities to just get up and be happy with this new service, or they won't become people. But if it's not put together, that's where the problem lies.
Yep, thank you, committee member, for that comment. This is something new. This is a pilot, and I'm absolutely sure that there will be things to work out. There'll be kinks along the way, but we do have call-in numbers. We've done our best to kind of make those pain points a lot easier. So we will always have a call-in and a dispatcher that can help if you're stranded or your vehicle's not getting there. So those will be staffed, but your point is definitely heard.
Yeah, it just scares me a little, because I remember in July, because I remember some of the things that we were talking about, and we mentioned those way back then, and now we're still struggling to have them up on the, and running correctly, because we told that same story back then. So I like the project, it's just I want to make sure that, if we do put it into action for real, that those bugs get kind of worked out. Because, just like Metro, they got their bugs and we have to keep working at it, Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. And from what I understand, to the tune of hundreds of these are happening around the world, like actively, is that correct?
Yeah, we have I think there's 3 active in the Twin Cities region right now. So MVTA and Southwest Prime, the services that you saw for State Fair, those are microtransit. I'm not sure if microtransit specifically is serving the State Fair, but they both run their own microtransit service.
Okay. And is the curb-to-curb feature within that zone, or is it only the pickup curb and then you can go outside the zone for drop-off? Is pickup and drop-off all have to be within that 2 square miles?
Correct. It all has to be within the 2.5. We do have a expansion zone option, but that will be in part based on customer feedback and what we're seeing on wait times. But we do have, there's opportunity to expand because that is one of the benefits of the software. You don't have to do a whole new scheduling route like you would on fixed route. You can have that little bit of flexibility.
And for clarification, this is for anybody who wants to ride, anybody who wants to participate, not just Metro Mobility folks.
Correct.
I have a few more questions. I think you do as well. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You asked one of my questions about, is this the service area from drop-off to pickup? The follow-up question to that was, so this is a pilot project or a program, so you're getting it off the ground to get some data to see if it's going to move forward. What metrics are you kind of looking for in such a small area to make the project kind of maybe expand to the larger area, or?
Yes, great question, committee member. So The two goals that I said before, the expanded mobility choice for like low wealth, communities of color, those are part of the metric. So we've turned that set of goals into kind of key performance indicators. So we have data sets that we want to see, responses, data that, some standards that are set that we want to either hit or go above or go below. And I actually had that slide for, I think, Transportation Committee. I just didn't include it here. So if there's interest, I can include that when I send out the updated set as well.
Okay. Yeah, just the fear, or not fear, but, you target a certain area, you set your goals, it doesn't work, so the program doesn't move forward, where it could have worked maybe in a different area. So that balancing act, I can understand, is probably difficult, but, and you probably vetted this particular area for those particular reasons. So just curious on, again, what those metrics were.
Yes, great point. So one thing that's absolutely for sure is this is not going to perform like traditional fixed route transit. So we can't, one of the things I'm trying to kind of press and remind everyone, it's not going to perform like our traditional fixed route. So those kind of standard key performance indicators that we would be looking at, like passengers per in-service hour, are not going to be similar. So we need to be looking very heavily at qualitative feedback from riders. So we have 2 survey points through the project that we're working with our survey team at Metro Transit on to do formal surveying process for riders, where we can hear some of that feedback directly and incorporate it into kind of that decision-making process.
Thank you.
So I'll ask your questions and you ask my questions. That was one of my questions too, and I do have a follow-up to that question. And I'm sure these are involved in the metrics, the data points that you're looking at, but accessible rides provided and also the subsidy per ride, I'm guessing you're gonna dive into both those numbers.
Yes, and this, I forget how we exactly captured this subsidy per ride because that's not my area of expertise, but that concept we actually have in there. So I can send the whole spreadsheet if people are interested. So
Thank you. Heidi, go ahead.
Is there going to be like a website, or how do they learn about all the things you've been teaching us today? Kind of like the ins and outs and how this works. You know what I mean? Yeah, we got an app, or we got this, but how does it all work? So, if I'm in that area and I am qualified to use it, I can actually use it, correctly, to the best of my ability. And then the other thing is, did you pick a service area that has a lot of things to do, or is it just house to house, or what? I don't know how the length, you know what I mean?
Yep, thank you. The service area has a very good mix, I would say. So one of the things that we tried to hit was a mix of residential, regional destinations, and amenities like grocery stores. So we do have a regional park in there. We've included 2 entry points for park access, grocery store access, and residential access. So
are you very clear about, when, like Metro Mobility is very clear about, I bring my cart, and then they can put my groceries, or they can load my thing, because they have taken, they're very clear about, so are you going to be very clear that when I go grocery shopping, I can only have so many, bags or whatever, because I don't know how the vehicles are set up, Do you have some guidelines on how this all works?
They are set up exactly like Metro Mobility buses, except they'll be full point of sale. So they'll look interior-wise. The point of sale setup will be the same as the buses. So you'll have a place where you could put in cash or scan your go-to card, or you can visually show a ticket to the driver. So those will be a little different, but the interior will look like Metro Mobility vehicle.
I think it would be very wise if you set up some kind of guideline in like ABC 1, 2, 3, and how this works, and then you can get some really good feedback if it sucks or if it works. Because we kind of know how Metro Mobility, they're supposed to come to our door, they're supposed to do A, B, and C. We kind of got the routine, and then if it doesn't work, we can go to customer complaint, and then we, because you want our feedback. So I think it would be very helpful to have some kind of layout and how this works, including the app, because the app might be a little confusing. And then you'll get your feedback the way you want it for the pilot project, I think. Because Metro Mobility does this every so often and asks these questions.
Thank you, Heidi. That's actually a really good point. We wouldn't want a Metro Mobility rider expecting it to have the same level of service that Metro Mobility does. So that's a good point. Andy, go ahead.
You know, in a simple way, Heidi and members of the committee, what I'm hearing you describe is just a service guide.
Yes.
So, you know, maybe just, you know, framing it up as simply as that really what we need to make sure as part of the rollout is some accessible document available online that is essentially a service guide that talks about the 10-minute window, that talks about the service area, talks about the fact that it's inclusive to pick up and drop off, and that it's the same fare as the city bus and all the social fares apply.
Yeah, and then it comes with an app and I have to download it. At least I kind of know what I'm getting myself into. And it could turn out to be a really good project, and if it gets off the ground, great. I'm all for it. I just need to know a little bit, you know, before I jump into it.
Yep.
Yes.
We might be looking to you for help there. If Metro Mobility has a guide that really works, that's in a format that people like, we can just replicate that.
Is that okay to do, or can they do that? I don't know if it's legal or not.
Oh, yeah, we can absolutely information share. It's all, you know, one council and, yeah.
Okay, cool, awesome.
Did you just say one council?
Yes. Any other comments, questions? Otherwise, thank you. We're excited to see this kick off.
Thank you, Meredith.
Yes, thanks,
I
everyone.
wish I lived up there so I could
Thanks
get
for your
some
attention.
easy rides. Oh, we're just cruising along here.
Thank you, Andy, for helping.
All right, now I'll give a quick update on the TAAC.
We didn't ask if there was questions online.
Jeff, Ken, do you have comments, questions?
I don't know. Ken looks like
Trevor?
he's here.
Thank you for joining us, Trevor.
Did any of them have any?
All right.
Of course.
Okay, so no questions or comments from our folks joining us online. I'll give a quick update on the 30th anniversary, and Darrell, please chime in if you want. We had our first meeting last week.
And I missed it all because I didn't understand.
It's
Sorry.
okay, it's okay. We've scheduled our next meeting, I think it's in another week.
Okay, send it to me in a way that I can be there.
I have, and we can connect offline about that invite too. Right now, we're focusing on two things, one of which would be a timeline of the 30 years the TAAC has been operating, and also a driver or operator or technician recognition award from specifically the Transportation Accessibility Advisory Committee. So those are two things that we want to do.
A timeline of October, is that right?
Well, you can jump in when I'm done. How about that? We did connect with Metropolitan Council Communications Department. They are confident that they can find the box of documents from the 90s that have all of the information about the history of the transportation accessibility. Please wait till I'm done talking. Please wait till I'm done talking. So we'll be able to put that together and also put a call out to essentially everybody to nominate drivers, operators, and then we'll come up with some sort of process to narrow those down and give those awards away. Darrell, did you want to add anything?
I just think it was a real, I think it was a good first steps. I think the marketing team really was excited about it. Was that Ann?
Sarah. It was Sarah, yeah.
Yeah, I think Sarah was excited about it. And I think that really shows the internal partnership within the system and the importance that we understand that a small bit of recognition goes a long way in the retention of keeping your employees and keeping them happy. And so I think if TAAC can play a part in that, that is my goal, to make sure that we play a small part in that. And overall, I think that shows the value that we have to the community.
Yep, and I think what you were trying to remind me of is we're hoping to have the awards be able to go out, I think, by October, which is Disability Employment Awareness Month, or at least by the end of October. Yeah, yeah. Heidi, did you have comments, questions?
I was going to say we should talk about, because I remember being a part of, we need transportation, for, in the I think it was the 90s, we had to, when they had the old location over there, and so I don't know if we're going to talk about some of, some of that, where we had to fight to have the transportation and get the help, because they need to see all sides of the 30 years of how we got to where we are today,
Yeah, bring that to the next meeting. So details we'll discuss.
I was just thinking, it's not
Definitely.
just one-sided story, but we look at the good and the bad and the ugly, and so then they can really learn about the history of how we got where we are today.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, definitely. And any TAAC member, if you have tidbits of information or fun facts about TAAC, by all means, you can email me. You can ask to be part of the work group. We are, I forget who had it. It was a really good idea to reach out to old TAAC chairs and even old TAAC members.
That was my idea.
Yeah, that was Darrell.
I hope that anybody that hears this, whether they're viewing it online or they hear in the playback, whatever. If you know of any former members of TAAC or former chairs that would like to be a part of it, definitely reach out to David or Andy or Allison or myself and let us know, because I think this is definitely a start of something that we could do at least on an annual basis. So.
And if I find my old Metro Mobility book, I'll bring it.
Please do.
It got a former person that he finally passed away, but he was the chair, and he was on the cover of it.
Yeah, you're talking about Ron Biss?
Ron Biss, yeah.
So if I still have it, then I'll bring it.
Historical items?
Oh, yeah.
Give it all to us. We'll sort it out. I'm thinking of some sort of interactive or at least timeline on our page of the Metropolitan Council's website. They can stay there in perpetuity. That just sort of lets people know what the history of TAAC is. Nothing? Okay.
Like a panoramic view.
Yeah. I think it'll be fun. Any other questions or comments, or folks who want to join the work group because it sounds so ridiculously awesome? No? Okay. I didn't do a good job of selling it, I guess. We already have 5 of us, so it's all good. All right, let's move on. Reports. Ken, do you have anything on Blue Line for us? You're muted. You have just been unmuted by the...
Okay, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So Blue Line Extension CAT Committee. The former existence has retired, and we're in the process of reorganizing and reappointments to the Blue Line Extension. I have been asked if I would continue representing TAAC on the Blue Line Extension Citizen Advisory Committee through this new 2-year period, and I have happily agreed to that. So we will be starting up soon. I think our next meeting isn't until either late August or September as the new team. But this is a restart for the last final home stretch of the Blue Line Extension, as the route has been determined at this point. And now all the really detailed work starts, which is really the exciting part for me, where we get to have input on station alignment and station amenities and all that kind of stuff. So I'm happy to be a part of that when it starts back up again soon.
Thank you very much, Ken.
He stayed.
Yeah. So Chris is not in the room. Darrell just left, so we'll ask Darrell about the gold and purple line when he gets back. Bus priority seating TAAC work group. I don't think they've met in a little while. Did anybody want to update on that? I have seen a few bus advertisements that focused specifically on priority seating and what it's there for. So I imagine that probably came out of the work that that group did. So kind of cool to see that on the side of buses. But if anybody did want to chime in on that, by all means they can. They don't have to, but there are fruits to your labor, so that's nice to see. Awesome. All right.
Just say one thing.
Yeah, of
about
course.
it.
So we'll do Heidi and then Ken.
We still do need to do some teaching because people are still using the front seats just randomly because they're not really thinking, oh, I can go in the back and the whole back of the bus is empty and like everyone. So the purpose of those signs, I don't know how we're using them, aren't making, I don't know. And then if we can do it in different languages, that would be awesome, like Spanish and, the different cultures we have.
Yeah.
Then that would be awesome. So if you can take that back to the work group, I would appreciate it because I see this all the time, We got a whole bus, share it.
Thank you, Heidi. Those seats are just so inviting, and we'll never not have people sitting in those seats. The goal is really just to minimize it as much as possible.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Ken, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention as a reminder that Allison sent out a request from Doug Cook to complete a short input survey about the recent change in the light rail system where they're now using two trains as opposed to 3 trains, and to share what kind of experience that creates for us. I sent in some extensive comments on how that affects me as a blind traveler on the light rail. 3 cars really does make a huge difference versus the 3 cars which we're used to. But I really acknowledge the reasons why we're trying this. It's for safety and trying to improve the confidence of riders that this is a safe system. So I would just encourage people, if you haven't done that, please consider doing that. What effect would that have on just a 2-car train system versus the regular 3 cars that we're used to? How would that affect you? I think it's really important for them to know how that affects our disability community.
Thank you, Ken.
He makes a good point.
He does make a good point, and given that was a member comment, I'll just jump to member comment. Heidi, do you have a member comment? Okay.
He makes a good point because the other thing I wanted to piggyback on what he said was when they have rallies and stuff, because I've actually been where the Capitol, when we could go to the Capitol and speak our minds in a good way. I've seen those trains so packed that you couldn't even breathe. So, down to 2, it's going to be a lot worse, But he is right. We should give our thoughts and ideas.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that because I've actually lived it for real. And that was just one train, was on. You imagine the other 2.
Yes. So as Ken stated, please do, if you're so inclined, respond to that because the Met Council does take that into consideration. Go ahead, Darrell.
Ken, one of the questions that I had, because I do ride the light rail back and forth as a connection a lot, and I have seen the 2 cars versus 3. When they had 3 cars, that didn't often mean that that 2 of them were more accessible and 1 wasn't. So I don't know that I noticed a difference other than the fact that people aren't so spread out, and maybe people have to learn to maybe be a little bit more quieter because they're closer together. So they, maybe don't have that interaction of the full length of the train like they used to. So it actually encourages a different type of decorum and different type of behavior when you're forced to be closer together.
Yeah.
And I do have personal bias, I did get assaulted on the platform yesterday, so it's been less than 24 hours. And so it's pretty raw, and it happened during daylight. But of course, I got back on the train and completed with my business after I reported it. And luckily, they caught the individual, and he's being charged with 5th-degree felony assault, aggravated assault, as he stole my money and ran away. Luckily, he didn't get my $300 that I was taken to the med shop, so he only got $14. But good, more power to him, right? But we almost went on the tracks together, tipped over together as he was tussling with me. So that was interesting. But we'll see what happens. So this is a very hot topic right now, internally as well as publicly. And I do think maybe being closer together may propose some challenges just in the initial start, or maybe during peak time hours or high activity hours like sporting games, or after people have been drinking a little bit, or vice versa. But I think it's very imperative that we look at this issue, and I don't see any reason why we can't go from 3 cars to 2 cars. So that was a long positive response to the change, but it wasn't without great thought and understanding of the system. And understanding what could be challenging about it as well. I mean, putting people closer together could cause more harmful interaction, not less, but I disagree. I think over time it would greatly improve.
Do any other members have comments? Or Andy, do you want to respond?
David, this is Jeff. David, this is Jeff Dane.
Go ahead, Jeff. And
Can
then
you hear me?
And then I see Trevor as well. So we'll go to Trevor, we'll go to Jeff and then Trevor. Member comment.
Could you have Allison send that email back out that Ken referenced?
Well,
I saw it, but I think I deleted it. I could probably look in my trash, but
we'll get it to the group.
great.
Trevor,
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
So Trevor, member comment. This is
I wanted to. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to echo what Darrell was saying about, and I've ridden the light rail recently, and I get the concept of the two car trains, with the hope that you'll be able to monitor activity for the driver would be. But I personally think that if the driver is too busy driving the train, he's not going to be able to enforce some of the rules. I think without having somebody doing a sweep every once in a while so that people know that, because I've been on and nobody checks, fares. I haven't seen a fare checker in months. And last time I was riding the train, people were smoking on it. Little thing came on, it said, smoking's not allowed, but people were smoking anyway. People were going up and down the train car, starting fights. And I have to hide my visual cane because I worry that if they see my visual cane, they will target me because they'll think because I'm blind that I'm an easy target. And I think people with disabilities are easy targets for assault on the light rail. On the bus, I feel totally safe. It's fine. But on the light rail, it's, I've been avoiding the light rail at all that's possible because, fortunately for me, our office, the Minnesota Council on Disabilities office is on University and Snelling. And fortunately, the 94 bus stops there. So I don't have to take the light rail to get to the office. I do need to take the light rail to get to the Capitol building, which I do a lot of work at. And so it's very frustrating having to avoid the light rail. I'm a big proponent of public transit and I love the light rail. I love light rail systems, but in Minnesota, we just aren't enforcing it enough. And the light rail is just ripe with potential assault and people not paying, there needs to be more frequent fare checks, more frequent security on that light rail because it just isn't safe anymore.
Thank you. Thank you, Trevor. Go ahead.
Trevor, and to the committee, I do want to clarify one thing. This didn't happen to me on the train or on a bus. This happened to me in broad daylight in the public space of the platform. So having fare checkers and having police presence available, or even some community people present, like maybe a community officer or a service community officer, or whatever they call the CSOs, or similar to what we do at the airport with people coming in and out of the airport. If we had some of those on our transit system, I think our light rail stops would be a lot safer. But let me re-clarify. Let me tell you, that didn't stop me from riding the train. That didn't stop me from taking the train where I was supposed to go and where I was supposed to be. So I feel completely safe riding our system, whether it's daytime, whether it's 2:00 in the morning. So I do think there's definitely a need for some other eyes on the ground, other than video surveillance, other than the train operator, other than the local law enforcement police officers, other than transit police officers. It was interesting, when I was having my interaction, right after my interaction, they wanted me to go ID the suspect. I didn't feel necessarily that was appropriate for me to do, or I was in a safe spot to do that. But eventually, we proceeded to go towards where they had potentially picked up the suspect, and eventually, then I thought the transit officers were making some smart comments to me, because originally they wanted me to go down to the transit center and fill out a report of incident, and then they would choose to prosecute or investigate. And I said, by then the guy's going to be gone, nothing's going to happen. He's taken my money, and you can physically see that I've been assaulted. I mean, it's pretty obvious. And they're like, yes. So within moments, they were like, no, we're not going to have him go towards the car. They shot me a picture of who they had picked up. The officer showed it to me, and with a positive ID had taken place. And then the only other thing that I would suggest a correction in is, after the whole incident had taken place and I couldn't go down to look at medical attention or even think about medical attention because my adrenaline was still pumping. I was just glad I was safe. I was constantly thinking about my daughter and my wife, and the fact that it was national night out. So it was a lot. And the officer then proceeded to give me a couple free ride tickets. Like, that's really what I needed or what I wanted. So I thought that was kind of insulting. And I understand that that's all the ability that they have to empathize in a situation like that, but maybe not presenting the free ride tickets right after the fact, maybe putting them in the mail with a nice note saying we acknowledge what had happened. This is, if you want to know the details of what happened, please reach out to us, and we can follow up. So some of those things I think could have been dealt with a little differently, but I do appreciate, and I do say again, that I nowhere near does this stop me from riding the light rail by myself or with my family. Yes, but today, in today's standards, I'm gonna be totally honest with you. My family will not let me ride by myself, so they are standing by they've been at the Children's Museum for the last 2 hours, hanging out, and they'll be meeting me as I leave today. So I will say it definitely does impact the whole family when something like this happens. So I don't want to diminish it and say that there isn't issues along our system, but our system is safer than other systems that I've looked at. I've looked at systems in Chicago. I've looked at systems in Philadelphia. I looked at systems across the country. And we have one of the most responsive and one of the most active transit police and transit systems. Even though it took them a while to get to me, they were able to do their job and did it successfully. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Darrell. Just a reminder to folks, to Ken's original point during member comment, if you have an opinion on the three-car LRT moving down to two-car LRT, please fill out that survey. And also another reminder that this is not technically an official agenda item, so Metro Transit is not taking notes on this right now. If you have issues on the trains or the buses, you got to call it in. What I'm thinking is we'll maybe have a safety agenda item in September or October. Just a reminder to folks that, and it's totally fine. Member comment, y'all can talk about whatever you want, but I just want to make sure that you know that your comments are not being, taken under advisement by a Metro Transit staff member right now. Go ahead, Heidi.
I just wanted to say, I will always have to take the bus or the train, or I wouldn't be doing some of the things I do, because people aren't running to me saying, I'll give you a ride. And I am a lady, I know that, and I'm disabled, and I have, just so you know, it happens on the train, and it also, I've never had any bad things on the train. I mostly had it on the bus because for some reason, on certain buses, drunk people seem to like me. And so I don't know why, but it's just something about me. And I don't even have to do anything. So to the point of both of you, you're both right. And you're both kind of got your opinions and ideas and how you're scared and happy and joyful and whatever your feelings are. But we just got to figure out how we can still be in the community and not freak ourselves out so much that we can't even do what we need to do, Because I've had it on the bus and never had it on the train, and Darrell had it on the platform, and he's a little worried. And then so we got to do something where I don't know if there's a support group or if there's something we can do or talk about, because I don't know if the community wants to talk about this, or something we can bring up down the line, or, maybe one of the TAACs we can talk about it. Just something to think about.
Yeah, I think having an official safety agenda item discussion in the next few months is maybe a good idea. I think it was a few months ago we did talk about
because
community.
We're bringing it up in different ways. Mine is more like just people and I've had, to be truthfully honest, I've had people on the bus say, get off of her and leave me alone, And then I've had people who don't want to give a seat because they're rude, and I've literally been, no one's ever stole anything or done anything bad to me. It's just those little things that, And like my dad said, she can't be in her house all the time because she's a girl and disabled. She has to get out in the community. So how do we talk about this? So maybe that's something in the future we can talk about as we're doing all this cool work. Thank you.
I agree, Heidi. I think that, we can maybe table this topic for now and have a more higher level discussion about safety at another TAAC meeting. Are there any other members who want to make member comment on anything in particular? Not this issue, it could be anything, or this issue too. It's up to you. It's turning into agenda item at this point. We have time, so why not?
One of the things that I don't know if this is focused enough, but I was thinking as I was listening to Darrell, I know I have, God, what do you call it? Essential tremors, in addition to memory loss at the moment, but essential tremors. And I know that one of the characteristics of that is that when you're overly anxious, the performance of basic skills, the harder you, with tremors, they say the harder you try, the worse it gets, the worse you perform. And I'm thinking about how anxiety with some disabilities it's like if somebody says, calm down in the middle of a tremor, it's like, oh, that's exactly the wrong, it seems logical. And I don't know if that's too vague or too, probably is, yeah.
Thank you. Andy. Andy, go ahead.
I would not tell anybody what feedback to leave, but I will say that there are many connections, particularly, to make a schedule, those doors on those trains can't be open very long. For people with any kind of a mobility difference, there are absolutely connections that I can currently make with a third train, where I can just make it to that last door on the third train that I won't be able to make on a two-car train.
You're right.
And people should balance what they think is safer, the perception of a two-car train potentially being safer, or the perspective of waiting 10 or more extra minutes on the platform. So as people consider what feedback to leave, I just wanted to put that out there as something to keep in mind.
Andy, that's an excellent point. But then my point is that third car going to be accessible to all the time, or is it not an accessible car? Do you see what I'm saying? I'm okay if it's two cars and they're accessible, right? But if it's three cars and only one's accessible, then really.
Yeah, and you don't know.
So how about
All the
this?
cars are accessible.
Yeah,
Oh, are
yeah.
they?
So
they're all the
That's what
same.
Ken said.
Yes.
How about this? So we have the survey.
No, not.
The information's not being gathered now. The information is being gathered by the survey. We can continue to talk about this. We have a few more minutes, but you'll have more impact by providing this information to the survey rather than right here. But we can continue to talk about it if you want. But go ahead, Darrell.
Never mind.
Okay.
Never mind, it's fine.
I'm totally fine talking about it. We're just kind of having like a campfire discussion at this point.
I do wanna see how many people are here are gonna try to venture out to the state fair. I would like to see that. I do, because
I have to figure out how to do all this.
Do you want to say something?
I just was gonna say, does Darrell have a report on the gold and the purple line?
Yes, I was gonna, thank you for reminding me of that. Darrell, did you want to?
Yes, Phil, I think I did give a report about the gold line, last month or the month before, relating to the new project manager and so forth, and the new changes that came about over there. And I will say that, the gold line, was proudly presented at the Filipino Days, in Woodbury, a couple weeks ago. During that time, Liz Jones was out there with her staff. And then the purple line formally met. Last month was their first meeting. I am impressed by the caliber of folks that were picked on that committee. I serve on that committee. I'm under CBEC, I believe, or I may serve as the TAAC representative as well. I did attend another meeting with some local officials about the Purple Line and about the merger particularly, and they had some folks from MnDOT there, so it was an overall meeting of how are we gonna propose these potential. I think there's there's about 12 changes along that route that we're looking at maybe changing now. So we're trying to narrow that down. And I think those of us on the committee can do that. We have not picked our formal structure yet, so that it's kind of frustrating for me because I assume that they'll pick it like they did with the goal line and it will follow the same structure. But if the committee doesn't want to, then we'll do something else. But does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Darrell, for the gold and purple line update, and thank you, Councilmember, for reminding me that we had to go back to that. I don't have anything to report. Are there any members of the public who would like to make a comment?
I would like to know about the bus priority scene. Well, I know it's on there in the bold print.
Yep, so I did ask, I think you might have been out of the room. I did ask for an update on that. Nobody chimed in. I did make a comment that I have observed the billboards or the side of buses having specifically things that denote, that say priority seating and what it's for. So I imagine
And
that came
then
out
I
of that group.
made a
There was a
comment
short
too,
update
Darrell.
on that while you were out. Cool.
My comment was to put it in different languages.
Yes.
And just kind of help.
Oh,
people.
okay, I caught the tail end of the language
Yeah,
thing.
because I was seeing different groups of people, from all the different groups we have in Minnesota. So the wide variety that just, like the front of the bus, they like to sit there. The back of the bus doesn't really get used sometimes.
So if there is no member of the public that would like to comment,
I do want
we
to
can
say
adjourn.
one thing.
You want to do one more member comment? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah,
Heidi.
mine is, I really think we've struck on something that we've never really talked about, because, it's sad what happened to Darrell, and it's not good that it happened to me or to anybody who takes transportation. Is not good. But I think it's something we do need to talk about now, because we talk about safety with people, but we don't talk about when we're out in the community and how to watch our environment and how how do we get help, and who do we talk to? I mean, does transit really have a good guideline or a resource or a number, or do we teach our kids, when we send them off, So, because this is the way of the world if you can't drive from, like me, So I think we need to start developing, if we need a work group or something, or do something, I'd be more than willing, because I've actually had it happen. And there are nice people, but they're not always going to be there to save me, And I don't want the next time to be sad.
I think it's also important, Heidi, to always remember that we as people with disabilities that identify as having a disability, we have the right and the opportunity to take our own risk and manage our own risk. And I think that often gets not talked about enough in public circles and circles that require us to have a little bit different expectations and different understandings how we should operate, and the things that we should not say, or maybe we shouldn't say them too loudly, or maybe we shouldn't be aggressive when we say them. And I think a lot of times we forget, and a lot of times I think people that are watching us don't often allow us the opportunity to manage our own risk, and then put the necessary expectations on us and supports with it, that gives us the opportunity to shine and succeed through
And the
life.
reason I brought this up because the U of M, because I'm on some projects with them at ICI, and they're doing transportation and how to get out in the community. And the ARC is doing something too. And so we need to start talking about where, I don't want them to be so scared that they don't want to try it, but at the same time, they need to know the ups and downs and ins and outs, you know, the good, bad, and the ugly. And so if you really want to go see your friend across town, go ahead. If you want to go to a baseball game, I'm more for it, you know, go for it. And just be safe and do all, you know, just like crossing the streets and doing all the other things. So we are talking about it right now as we speak, how to be out in the community. But, you know, and more people are coming out of institutions. This would be something I think Minnesota could step up and we could be a really good, maybe we could teach other states, you know? Something to think
I
about.
believe our transit system, the reason why I stay here as long as I do with folks that I represent and serve under this region is because I think we as good transit riders are good, you know, we have to be good stewards and good, what would I say, ambassadors of transit and what transit means or how it values. So folks, like when I represent folks that don't use transit at all, you know, they'll say things like, well, good for you, it works for you, you should use it. Or now I know 2 people that use it, great. You know, and the reality is I have to learn to shift that narrative and say, well, how often do you not use your car? And then we start to think about that, and they start to say, well, you know, I could use my car less on the weekends and maybe use transit, you know, so you gotta build those bridges. And I think people with disabilities often can do that, but we have to do it in such a way that that it doesn't look like they're saying, oh, it only works for you or those people, or I understand why these people ride it, but I don't need it. Because we all need it.
Thank you all for that nice little robust discussion at the end. We are at 2:28.
So can you take some of our ideas back and
So,
then
yes.
you can figure out a good.
Yes,
something to do,
I've stated that we will definitely have a safety as
not
an
only
agenda
that,
item.
If they want to put a group together, I would be.
Yep, safety will be an agenda item, maybe even next month. Okay? All right. Thank you all. You can have 1 minute of your lives back. We are adjourned.